Welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. We're here today with Ingmar Jürgens, who is the co-founder of Climate & Company and the vice chair of the board at Germanwatch. And we're here at our German-American Trade and Tech Conference. And we're excited to speak with you about some of the big questions that we've been asking this far in the conference. And so I'd like to start first with the question of how can global economic actors better take sustainability into account while also remaining competitive?
Yeah, I think the question sounds a bit as if there was this dichotomy, competitiveness or climate or sustainability. And I think today they clearly go hand in hand. Now, what we see particularly from the financial sectors is that companies are required to disclose their impact on human rights, on the environment, that increasingly consumers are asking for this information. So I think the best thing that transnational companies and global economic actors can do is full-heartedly embrace the emerging regulation that is coming. And their best bet is, I think, that we get international alignment of these policies, right? Because otherwise what we are going to see is that these companies are going to be faced with all kinds of different standards, all kinds of different reporting requirements about their sustainability impact and their carbon footprint. And so what I have been missing a little bit is that these companies actually get engaged in the policy discourse and are standing up and saying, hey, it's totally fine if you make it mandatory, just make it work for us and align it. And please, dear policymakers around the planet, talk to each other.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I guess, flipping it then and thinking about those regulators, how can they maybe better work with the financial sector itself to achieve some of those environmental objectives?
Yeah, I think the most dynamic regulatory issue emerging in that field of sustainability and finance is clearly the area of disclosure, of corporate reporting. And that is crucial because there's an increasing number of financial institutions who would like to exit deforestation, for example, right? There was a big declaration at COP27 in Glasgow already where a lot of asset managers said, we're committed to halting deforestation. There have been major CEOs at Nestle, Unilever saying, we want to stop deforestation. We know it's somewhere, but the point is it's somewhere hidden in the supply chain. It's somewhere upstream where we don't really have a good grasp on. So when you're asking how can regulators maybe also support this transition and sort of empower and leverage this massive potential of the financial sector to contribute, then it'll be by, again, establishing international disclosure standards to make sure that supply chains feature. Yeah, because particularly for G7 economies, a bulk of the environmental risks, of the human rights violations, they're somewhat hidden. They're in the supply chain, and that is, I think, exactly what the financial sector needs now: a good and coherent set of ambitious disclosure standards. So then they can work on it. Yeah, and that is, and maybe some people, including in the German finance ministry and in the Liberal Party in Germany, I think haven't fully appreciated that this is empowering the market. This is market-based policies at its best, right? Because what we are basically doing, we're reducing information asymmetry to enhance the efficiency of capital allocation. Yeah, and so I think that would be my answer. That's what we want policymakers to do. That's what the German government needs to engage in, and that's also where the transatlantic dialogue is so important, to align and to set global standards together that work for the financial sectors and for capital flows across borders.
Yeah, you make excellent points there as well, and I think just as my last question, I would kind of zoom out a bit too and think about the role of the WTO. And ask the question of how might the WTO be reformed to, create a more fair global trading system while also helping to mitigate climate change?
Yeah, I mean, at this conference, there are amazing WTO experts, and I'm not going to claim I'm one of them. Although I have, as an economist, have my views on what has worked and what hasn't worked in terms of trade and also sustainability. I think Ms. Ellert yesterday made one excellent point, which is about really trying to slash any persisting trade barriers for environmental technologies. But I think if there's one lesson from trade liberalization, which I'm a big fan of, is that it does not work without looking at the distributionary impacts of trade. The whole Brexit debate, the whole very populist policy discourse on the right side of the policy spectrum in the United States wouldn't have been possible if we had dealt better with the losers of trade. So the to get to economic theory, it's all great. The Stolper-Samuelson theorem works, right? So we know that workers, generally speaking, in developing countries will be better off, and but we know that workers in industrialized countries are worse off. So that's why we need to work on distributionary effects, and that is the most efficient way of getting good trade policies. What we have been seen as a reaction is tariff barriers, and that's a lose-lose scenario. But we have to be a bit, all these, free trade evangelists here also at this conference, they have to realize that, look, guys, we need to do a better job at dealing with the impacts, and that's where trade and climate policy have a very similar feature. There's with both transformation toward free trade, opening up to trade, and the low carbon transition, there will be winners and losers, and that's what needs to be tackled. And then I think future trade policies and also the trade liberalization agenda can again become as powerful as we need it to be.
Really important points, and I appreciate so much you taking the time to talk with us, share your perspectives. We are here at the Aspen Institute Trade and Tech Conference, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you again.
Thanks so much.